When Alexander III died, his infant granddaughter Margaret, the Maid of Norway, who was made in Norway, was declared Queen of Scotland, and a community of the realm was put in place to run the affairs of Scotland, which is one hell of a title, that, isn't it? The community of the realm. It sounds like one of those kind of private Oxford pig fucking clubs that David Cameron and Boris Johnson would frequent. And it read like a register of the House of Lords, because the community was made up of 2 bishops, 2 earls, and 2 barons. 2 bishops plus 2 earls plus 2 barons equals 1 community of the realm. And the community's most pressing issue was who Margaret should be married to. Before his death, Alexander had written to Edward I of England, hinting that he would like Margaret to marry into the English royal family. But if Margaret was to marry Edward's son, that would likely lead to a union of the crowns further down the road. And above anything else, Scotland valued its independence, or at least it used to. But still, a foreign marriage was deemed preferable to a domestic one, because if Margaret was to marry a member of the Scottish nobility, it would lead to a lot of tension and civil unrest. Basically, it's a bit like when someone from Alloa decides to marry outside of the family. You know, yes, it's going to be considered controversial, but ultimately, it's probably for the best, you know. But the question remained of which member of the English royal family should Margaret be married to. It came 700 years too early for Prince Andrew, who I am sure would have jumped at the opportunity to marry a child. But at the Treaty of Bern, it was decided that Margaret should marry Edward's son and heir Edward, but that Scotland would retain its independence. So Margaret, she set sail for Leith in September 1290. It was a particularly stormy crossing. Her ship was blown off course to Orkney, which was still in Norse control at that time. And Margaret, she was really suffering the effects of seasickness. And Margaret actually died in Orkney of seasickness. Now, I had no idea that children could die of seasickness. I feel like we've been awful blasé about letting kids go away with that Captain Birdseye all these years, you know? And so there were 13 competitors for the now vacant crown of Scotland, but only 2 had a realistic, legitimate chance of winning. It was kind of like the Scottish Premiership in that respect. And they were John Balliol, who was the great-grandson of David I's eldest daughter, Margaret, and Robert Bruce, who came from a long line of Robert Bruces, who was the grandson of David I's youngest daughter, Isabella. Now, John Balliol, he had the backing of Scotland's most powerful family at that time, the Commons. Everyone wanted to sleep with common people. And the Bruces, they were probably the second most powerful family in Scotland at the time. And there was no love lost between the two of them, very much like the Hatfields and the McCoys. And so in order to try and stop tensions from boiling over and into potential civil unrest, maybe even civil war, the community, they asked Edward I to arbitrate over who should be the next King of Scotland. Now, there is no way of getting across how monumentally crazy a decision that was. Like, that is like sending your granny to Harold Shipman for a checkup. Do you know what I mean? It's like the Jedi Council electing Darth Vader as their president. Just be like, I'm not sure about this Darth Vader lad. Like, he's going on about a Death Star and he's just invaded Wales as well. Like, listen, it's going to be fine. Don't worry about it. He's promising us 350 million space pounds a week if we leave the Intergalactic Union. Was that a very tacked on way of me being able to compare Boris Johnson to Darth Vader? Yes, it was. But in my defence, they are both heads of evil organisations. And it was just a few weeks ago that Boris Johnson was struggling to breathe as well. So, now anyway, Edward, he finds in favour of John Balliol, who's declared King of Scotland at Berwick Castle on the 17th of November 1292. And just a day after he's declared king, Edward makes him pay homage to him. And this is a pattern that would continue. After John Balliol's coronation at Scone Palace on St Andrew's Day, again, Edward made him pay homage. He was summoned to pay homage. And Edward, he took every opportunity he could to humiliate, to belittle John Balliol. He constantly made him pay homage. He usurped a lot of his rights as the Scottish king. He even summoned John Balliol to London to explain an unpaid wine bill that had been left by his predecessor, Alexander III. It's good to know that not even Scottish kings could afford London prices. But all this manipulation of John led to him getting the unfortunate title of Toom Tabard. basically means empty tunic. Like he was a king in name only. And they came to a head in 1294 when Edward insisted that John had to raise an army to help him fight the French. Now, Scotland had no interest in fighting the French. You know, James McFadden's ancestors were injured. And so he told Edward to beget to fuck. And instead of raising an army to fight the French, instead we signed a treaty with them. The Treaty of Paris was ratified in 1295 and it's been affectionately remembered over the years as the Old Alliance. Although it's just essentially an alliance between two countries that weren't getting on particularly well with England. Scotland's never really benefited all that much from the Old Alliance. Like every time we asked France to help us out, every time we phoned them up, they were, washing their hair or a cheese eating competition or something. If France really are our pals, right, then when we do get independence, I would like a Statue of Liberty. There you go. That's how you can make it up to us, France. Now, Edward, he saw the treaty as an act of rebellion, and he raised an army and he marched north, and he defeated the Scottish army at the Battle of Dunbar on the 27th of April, 1296. And pretty soon afterwards, Edinburgh, Stirling, Perth castles, they all surrender. And Edward, he installs English sheriffs and English garrisons throughout the country. It took Edward only 5 months to subdue Scotland. He was given the nickname Edward Hammer of the Scots, which really isn't that impressive because, everyone hammers the Scots. And on leaving Scotland at Berwick, Edward, he had a list written up of all the names of the Scottish nobility who had sworn allegiance to him. It was known as the Ragman's Roll. It had 1,500 names on it. But there was one name that was missing from the Ragman's Roll. That of minor nobility William Wallace, which really, really is amazing, folks, because believe you me, for a man from Lanarkshire to not sign on, unheard of, folks. And that is who I'm going to tell you about next weekend. That's what we're all here for, right? We want to hear about the big cheese, William Wallace. Well, I'll see you next weekend. We're going to tell you all about him. Cheers.